The Business of Art, brought to you by the Video Department. Thank you for tuning in to another episode of The Business of Art. I'm your host, Matt Polson. We are here with the illustrious Laine Satterfield. Laine, how are you?
Better now that I was just called illustrious.
You are illustrious. Laine and I have worked together in innumerable capacities. But before we get into all of that history, would you start with telling us a little bit of your history in the arts?
Sure, yeah. I started out as a bunhead. Started out as a ballet dancer, and I grew up with the Richmond Ballet and went away to summers and all that good stuff. And then when I was going into my senior year, my parents said, "You need to go to college." And I said, "Well, I can't go to college. I'm a dancer, you know." So they said, "Well, we're going to find a program for you." So I ended up going to Carnegie Mellon pre-college in musical theater, of all things, believe it or not. And I did not know what I was doing at all. And I was there with like the person who played Annie on Broadway and all this stuff. So I did get a little bit bit by the theater bug. I wanted to live in New York City. I was like, oh, I could go to NYU for theater. And so I auditioned Early Decision, and I got in, and went to Stella Adler Conservatory. So that was the start of that, and mostly classical training, but also a lot of movement, and then got into some experimental stuff and some original work with some friends there, and I graduated at 20, and they gave me my first teaching job, teaching adults and teaching yoga for actors. So at that point, I was doing a lot of writing, and we had gone to Edinburgh, and I saw this great Hungarian theater company that did gesture theater. So I got really into that, and I was really into shamanism at the time. And so I started writing a piece called Cave of Dreams about a woman who gets lost, stuck in her own dream world, because that happens to me all the time.
Sure.
Yeah. And I'm like, what is reality? And so I started a theater company at 20 in New York City. Mm. Had I known how much work that would be, I never would have done that. But I learned a lot, and we produced a lot, and we were at Theatorium and Present Company, and we got picked up, and the show got picked up. I directed it, and it was largely movement theater. And meanwhile, I was building my resume and things like that. To the point where I got invited to do an equity show, also kind of experimental in that vein, got my equity card, and then got an opportunity to move to Italy to work with a Commedia dell'arte company. And so I get my equity card, and then I become an expat for about 3 years. So I was back and forth.
Is Actors Equity just an American union?
I don't know.
That's a good question. I'm not sure about that.
Actors Equity
If it applies, like if you're working overseas.
You know what? I don't know.
Yeah.
But I didn't tell them. Don't publish that. I didn't. Anyway, I'm not a member of the AEA anymore.
Oh, okay. We'll talk about that.
Yeah.
Let's get to that later.
That's recent.
Yeah.
So yeah, and in the meantime, I had this former theater teacher who had started a theater company out in, actually in Richmond, but then went to Sun Valley, Idaho. Mm-hmm. And he had asked me to come play Nina and the Seagull, and that was when I was getting my equity card, so I said no. But I was out there in Italy, and I got a call from my then boyfriend who was like, "Hey, your theater teacher wants to..." Anyway, I ended up going to Sun Valley to do a guest artist contract back to musical theater to choreograph and be in James Joyce's The Dead.
Okay.
And when I was there, we got along so well that they asked me to join the company. And so I was like, I have this life in southern Italy. I have this life in New York. Do I want to have a life in Idaho now? So strange. And so I said, well, I've got to go to Denmark with the Italians, and then I have to go guest teach for my mentor at NYU at Stella, but I'll come back. And now that person is my husband. So crazy.
Yeah, the boyfriend really blew it by telling you about that call.
Yeah, he really did. He's happily married to someone else. It all worked out the way it should. But and then we eventually made it back here to Virginia to be closer to family. And since then, got into directing. Don't write as much as I used to. We did that writers group. Mm-hmm. That was really the last time. I haven't even touched that food for thought piece. But I still want to do it sometime. Very well. And worked for Spark, worked freelance, worked VCU. We did the winning presentations class. And for the last 10 years, I have been the director of education for Cadence. So I get to teach. I get to write grants again. Yay. Writing. Different kind of writing. Do budgets. Yay. Again. Plan parties. All the stuff that you do as admin. Direct. Act.
And you do a fair amount of writing, editing for students.
I do. Yes.
Yeah.
Especially for the outreach program.
So those skills came in handy later on down the line, for sure.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. But I feel really, really lucky. I mean, I've been able to... certainly when I was younger, I was bartending in New York and waiting tables and things like that. But for many, many years, I've been able to make my living as an artist.
Which is pretty much exactly what we're here to talk about. And that's why I thought you would be such a great guest for this, is because, how could you have foreseen when you were 20, starting a theater company, that you would eventually be in the position that you are now at Cadence? It literally is impossible.
Impossible.
Yeah. Well, one, Cadence didn't exist then.
No.
But two, you think that when you're in it, and your passion is acting or directing, whatever it is, that that's what you're going to do. Mm-hmm. But so often those paths end up taking us on a different path. Mm-hmm. And we end up in, you're sort of, would you say that your position right now is like a hybrid position? Like it's between an educator and an artist?
Yeah, I call myself a theater artist. Okay. That's my title. But my actual title is Director of Education. So I do a lot of program management, program directing, that kind of thing. But I love teaching. I always want to keep my hand in the teaching like you, keep my hand in the creative pot, maybe not like you, but we're hoping you're going to come out of retirement.
Creative pot, just different ways. Working on a short film right now, sort of in the pre-production stages of that, trying to secure locations. Just had a meeting today with Brendan Kennedy, future podcast guest for sure.
Brendan Kennedy, love Mr. B. We were emailing earlier.
Very good. Mm-hmm. And I definitely would get back on stage for the right project.
Would?
Oh, absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah.
Because we miss you.
Yeah, and Allison and I both talked about the potentiality of if, say, for example, Dogwood Dell's summer musical is something that we're both interested in. That would be a nice sort of ease back into things.
This is so good to know.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. And, there's something about, and this can transition us into a conversation about it, but there's something about... The pressure isn't the right word, but the position of the sort of regional professional theater that has put a bad taste in my mouth, and I think it's related directly to what happened during COVID.
Yeah.
I won't go into it again because I said it on a previous episode with Nathaniel, but essentially I thought that my theatrical artistic career was going like this, and like most people, it ended up going like this. All at once. And because of that, and it's nothing to do with the companies I was working with at all, or the projects, I think because of that, something shifted in my mind, and I gather a lot of theater artists' minds, that I never want to be put in that position again, where something completely outside of my control can take away my entire way of life like that.
Absolutely.
And so that's sort of why I already had the video business, but that's why we made a hard pivot to do that full time. Mm-hmm. Because that, unless AI deems it So that is hopefully not going away anytime soon. What was your experience like with that time?
Major pivot. So already Anna, our artistic and managing director for Cadence, had been thinking about, we got to get into film. It's the wave of the future. I mean, you've got this company. And so we were already planning that. And then the young people had nothing to do, right? So the first thing that we did was 12 days of quarantine. And each of our students took like something that they loved to do that wasn't necessarily theater related, and they would pass it on and make their own videos, and then we would edit. Still, the kids didn't have a lot to do, so we did Zoom theater.
Yeah.
Then we did...
That was about as bad as it got,
That
I
was
think.
really bad. But then we found some creative ways to do like home mixing. Like pretty much every young person for the musicals would create a studio, like that closet.
Yeah.
And mix, and then when we get somebody great like Joey Luck to mix it,
Bless his heart.
and then we would bring them with my mother. My mother makes pillows, by the way, if anyone needs pillows.
Interesting.
We're moving soon, and so she has 500 pillows. Plug for the pillows, Sue's pillows. But anyway, we put pillows out, socially distanced pillows out on like Chimborazo blacktop,
Okay.
and filmed the dance
Oh, okay.
so that they could all dance together.
Interesting.
It was bizarre.
Yeah.
And not something that I want to do again. Although I will say that our production of the Scottish play was actually kind of cool. Because by then we knew the backgrounds and stuff. That was kind of cool.
Well, we're not on a stage, so you can say what the Scottish play
I
is.
could. But we're in a studio. The Macbeth.
It's funny.
Yeah, so we pivoted quickly, and we're still, like, we just added a bunch of theater classes, especially adult theater classes. So the education was really what brought us through, and the film and TV stuff. And we're finishing up. I'm actually in it. I'm actually in the Bloodline series. I film again in 2 weeks.
Oh, wow.
But we've got great mentors like Clay McLeod Chapman, and, student writers, and it's a horror series, but it's based in Richmond, and social unrest and racial unrest and all of this. It's really cool. It's hard for me to watch because it scares me.
Okay, yeah.
Like, I had to do a shoot where I was being haunted. I was freaked out for like 2 hours after the filming.
When you don't want to spoil it.
Right. I won't tell you who haunted me.
No spoilers.
But I can't wait for you to see who was haunting me.
Oh, fun.
Because you know her. Yeah.
Well, now I know it's a her.
Yeah. It's a her. I'll tell you later.
Okay, yeah. Off camera. But I don't want to have to edit that out.
Yeah, but I think that's how, and again, super lucky because we're only a staff of 2, so nobody got laid off.
Yeah, that is very fortunate, huh?
But very fortunate because a lot of our friends,
That's one of the benefits of being only a staff of 2.
There are not a lot of benefits, but that is one.
One of the only.
Yes.
Yeah. No, we know that very well at the video department.
I know you do.
We're a staff of 2 as well.
Well, Bartlett.
Yeah, he doesn't contribute too much to post-production anyway. Okay. I'm trying really hard. So coming through the pandemic, your pivot, your focus switched to being more like, say you were 50-50 education and arts before, you switched to 80-20 now maybe?
I mean, maybe 70-30. We still have a main stage season. We have the Pipeline New Works program, which is amazing. We just finished all those readings.
I've been
Some
keeping in
really
touch with
fabulous. Oh my God, Eva's play is so good.
Yeah.
I was able to be in that one.
Oh,
and
good.
It was so much fun. And she encouraged us to dress up. And it was great fun. Got to be in Irene's as well.
Yeah.
So that was great. So yeah, I would say 70-30.
Yeah.
But definitely uptick on the education.
Yeah.
For sure.
I mean, nobody else is really doing it.
Not in the same way.
Not in the same way. Not even close.
And certainly not with the adult programs. And,
Right.
and the funny thing is, Matt, is that the adult programs I've got waiting lists.
Oh, interesting.
And I've been talking to people. I'm like, what is it? And I think after COVID, the adults are like, wait, what are the things that I haven't done?
Yeah.
Maybe this is something that I would like to explore. And so it's it's seasoned professionals, and then it's brand newbies, and a whole mix of in between. So it's pretty cool.
That is great. Is Rusty teaching that?
Rusty's teaching unstaged, and then he was ill, and so Denise Simone is teaching one. Rusty will start his other section. Maury Pearsall's teaching a practical acting course, which is Meisner-based scene work. Yeah. Erica Arvold just did a film and TV workshop, and we have a voiceover class coming up. Okay. April 27th and 28th, partnering with Red Amp. So they get a little demo.
Who's teaching that?
Rob Scoggins Jr.
Okay. I think I've spoken with him, actually.
Yeah, you might know him. So, yeah, sort of branching out to some different things.
That's great.
Yeah.
I think that's smart. I mean, I think you've got to, where opportunities are taken away, that is very sad, but it also creates space for new opportunities.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Let's talk about a little bit about the education business, because somebody who I really respect and I've done some work for recently said something to me once that blew my mind, and I thought that she was joking when she said it. And she said, "You know, Matt, there is a lot of money in education." And I was like, ha ha, but she wasn't joking. And she is basically in the personal training world. And not that the purpose of this podcast or this conversation is like, how do we make more money? But it is about how to take your passion for the arts and turn it into a business of some kind. And that's not always going to be by selling your art directly or by singing for a living, in my case, or whatever. So education is, I feel like in a lot of ways, especially as you're talking about for the adult market, is kind of untapped, especially in Richmond.
I agree.
Yeah.
I mean, I think so many people want to better themselves and keep exploring and keep learning. I know that I do. You know, I want to take classes. I want to, and teaching, I teach mostly the 12 to 18. Teaching keeps me alive, as does acting and directing. But I think, you know, the idea of any kind of arts education isn't necessarily about wanting to be an actor. Could be wanting to be an actor, but those skills are going to parlay into so many other 21st century skills. Yeah. You know, we all know this. And so, but I have to say, there's something really great about watching these students and tracking these students, because they keep in touch with me. And that's, I think, one of the greatest joys of my job is to work with these students, and then they become an intern and we're working alongside each other. Yeah. Or we're on stage together, you know, or they're teaching for us. Do you know what I mean? I love that continuing education, and seeing them find their own way as artists, as professional artists, you know, and it's not always as actors. Sometimes it is, but it moves. So did I answer your question? I don't know.
Well, yeah, and I mean, the idea, like, professional artist, like, what does that even mean? And, like, professional actor, what does that mean when you live in Richmond, Virginia?
Exactly.
It means something very different than if you live in New York or LA or Atlanta, some of those other bigger markets.
Right. And even if you get that Broadway thing, it might be 8 months, 2 years, 5 years before you get another show. So it's not like you make it, you know. I mean, what is it, like 1% of actors?
I think that's probably generous.
It's like 1%, if that.
I think we couldn't even say that if you're talking about earning a consistent full-time living year to year. Right. Like, maybe there's 1% every year, but like that's going to change from year to year, and who those people are. Exactly. So, and I think you know, you have to make your own opportunities, right? Right. And today, especially.
But I mean, I felt that way living in New York City in my 20s. Yeah. I felt like what I wanted to do didn't exist. Now, I'm sure it probably did, and I was just being young and naive, but I learned so much running a theater company in New York City. I learned about event planning. I learned about how to, you know, host a party, like those kinds of things. But I feel like, especially after COVID now, it's like you make your own opportunities. You use all those skills to make your own opportunities. Yeah. And when Erica was, she's a casting agent out of Atlanta, amazing artist and human being. She was telling our trained students, make your own films. Because they were like, what's the best advice? She's like, make your own films, make your own content, you know?
Yep.
And I feel like that's how some of these newer actors are making their way. They created their own thing.
Yes.
So I don't know that it's different. I think it's always been that way, and even more so.
Yeah, well, now we have the tools more readily available, especially for, I think that's probably, I mean, you can say it about theater and film. When you were 20 and doing that in New York, you needed space, right? And now for being a filmmaker, you don't, space is not necessarily the concern, but camera and sound equipment and lighting equipment. And you can, obviously your phone is the camera these days, and if you need some sort of decent microphone, you save up $100 or whatever and you can get it. And so, and you don't even need that to make a movie. You can just make a movie with your phone, which everyone has.
Yeah.
So everyone can be a filmmaker. But let's pivot to theater. Not everyone can be a theater artist because it is still tied, and I think just by the nature of what it is still tied to the venue to a certain degree.
Yes, it is. That's why we started doing Sightlines again. We brought that back. So that was really fun. We did Native Gardens at Wilton House.
Okay.
That was really fun.
Cool.
Although it was outdoor theater. Right. So we got rained out half of the performances.
Yeah.
So
outdoor theater is really
it's
tricky.
Tough. And then with some of those site specific, maybe you don't have enough seats in the yoga studio where you do something like Small Mouth Sounds, you know. Right. Not that we did that at the theater gym, but
but the Flick.
Yeah, the Flick was great.
Flick was amazing.
It
but
was so
also
much
you were
fun.
limited to seats, which you don't think of the Bird Theater as being a place limited to seats, but the audience sat on the stage.
Right.
So there was a limited amount of seating.
Yeah, exactly.
And, that's not a big
it was
stage
free.
Up there. Oh, okay.
We didn't charge for tickets.
I don't remember that.
Yeah, it was free. We got a grant. So I love that kind of thing. Like my friend Bob Bartlett has been doing. He did a play in a laundromat. He's out of Maryland.
Yeah. I follow him on social media.
Yeah. That's right, because you
I was in his New Voices.
That's right.
Or when he was the mentor.
Did you see the one in the record store?
I saw him posting about it. Yeah.
So I mean, I love that. Or the one that he did in the woods.
Yes.
I mean, it's genius.
Yeah.
Now, can you make money?
No. Limited. You can't make a full-time
Probably not.
income.
I mean, even in a big theater, it's hard to make money.
Yeah.
So then you have to look at, okay, cast sizes and how many equity contracts do you get, and is it a well-known title? It can be a great play, but if nobody's heard of it, musicals always sell better than straight plays. Yeah. All this, and so I feel like being in Richmond, there are some people that are very passionate about new work. I am one of those people. I love it. I'm like, give me a reading. I'll do a new work of I love it. It's also less time than a 3-week run with 4 weeks rehearsal. But it's hard to make money.
Yeah, I think that my rule of thumb, the 80-20 rule, applies to so many different things. And basically the gist of it is, more often than not, 80% of your results come from 20% of your actions. So for a business, you look at, all right, what 20% of my business is closest to bringing me 80% of my income, right? And that sort of rule can apply to a number of different things, but I think of that with new works. But in a different way. Like 80% of what you do as a theater needs to be accessible in the terms of appealing to a general audience, I think. If your goal is to get butts in seats, that might not be your goal. But if your goal is to get butts in seats, and that will afford you the 20% where you can be experimental.
Exactly.
Allison and I talked about this on this very couch. that the theater in Louisville that she worked at,
Yeah.
where they did the Humana Festival.
Yeah. Actors Theatre of Louisville.
Actors Theatre of Louisville, which is going through a lot of hard times
Oh,
since
yeah.
COVID.
Oh, yeah.
But pre-COVID times, they basically made 80% of their annual income from, do you know what it is?
Yes. What was it?
Dracula.
Oh.
They did a production of Dracula every year. That sold out.
That's what
every
Richmond
performance.
Ballet should do, because it was so good.
I heard it was great.
It was great.
But the Wells Theatre, Virginia Stage Company in Norfolk does that with the Christmas Carol. A lot of companies do that with the Christmas Carol specifically. But if you have the old Barksdale tried to do that with, what was it, Joseph and the Amazing Technicolor Dreamcoat, where they ran that for like years and years and years.
Yes.
And it's like, okay, like, if that's what it takes to allow you to be artistically to express yourself artistically, I know how to say it that way, then, and to pay your artists fairly,
right.
et cetera, then I feel like on some level you have to do what you want to do, and not necessarily run Joseph for 8 months out of the year.
Right.
But if Joseph sells out, maybe you do it for a month every year, just to like remind everyone, like, hey, like, this is why you love coming here, because if they come here and see something they love, I don't know what the percentage is, I would love to see the studies, but if you go to a theater, you see something that you love, how likely are you to buy a ticket to something in the future, or how likely are you to become a subscriber to next season?
Right.
And I would guess that there's a really big correlation between, I mean, obviously, it sounds stupid to even say, but having an enjoyable experience in the theater is going to net you going back.
And having a unique experience, too.
Yeah.
You know? It's tough, though. I mean, everybody should have their Nutcracker or their Dracula.
Right,
or
whatever that is.
If they can.
Mm-hmm.
But those things are also very expensive to produce, and it goes back to space. Goes back to space. Right? With theater.
Yeah.
Yep.
I think that the theater industry in particular has, and there are probably a lot of businesses that are like this. I think about like venues, like concert venues, music studios, where you end up with people who are inherently artists in managerial positions. I think you are probably one of the rare people whose brain works on both sides.
Thank you.
But like, you need someone, ultimately a theater that is a venue is a business. Mm-hmm. And it needs to be run as a business. Mm-hmm. And I think a lot of times we have seen, especially like smaller companies that have sort of come and gone through Richmond throughout the years, it was run not as a business, it was run as a 100% expression of artistic creativity.
Yes.
Which is what we all want.
Sure.
But is not the reality of just the world that we live in. I mean, pre-COVID or post-COVID, it's not the world that we live in. How has Cadence, and we've already talked about this a little bit, feel free to repeat yourself, how has Cadence navigated that world of being a new theater, being a part of a venue, being then nomadic in their productions? Like, how has that been for Cadence?
Well, we'll see, won't we?
Yeah.
You know, because so we did Thanksgiving. So our season this year's native. It was Native Gardens. Uh-huh. Well, no, actually, really only 2 plays. So the Thanksgiving play, which we did in the theater gym, very well known, Broadway, very fun, a comedy. So it did well. We did really well. Only 4 people. 1 set, pretty easy to produce.
It sold well.
It sold well. We had great audiences. We had some great talkbacks with Indigenous communities. It was relevant, but it was also funny. And it was also cringy funny. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And we were making fun of some of the people that we that are very well-meaning, you know, the woke white people. And that was really fun to take a look at the prejudices that we all
Yeah.
have inherently. So, and then the next play is at Firehouse in the fall, and that's True West, which they started rehearsing before COVID. It's the same cast.
Oh,
Everybody's
wow.
coming back, which is amazing.
That's amazing.
And the brothers are going to switch.
Who are the two brothers?
Stevie Rice and Landon Nagel.
Oh, God.
Oh, my God. But they started rehearsing
Wow.
back in 2019 because Rusty, who's directing,
Two firecrackers.
wanted a long firecrackers. Oh my gosh! And Stevie's actually going to come back from Charleston.
Oh, good.
Do you know what I mean? It's like
Yeah.
it's so great. So that's finally happening, but people know it, and it's what's great is Firehouse is doing Buried Child, right?
Yeah.
And so we'll be in right after. So
Yeah,
a little
that
bit of
is
a
great.
Sam Shepard festival.
Yeah, and I told Nathaniel this, that I think like that's like the Carol Pearsall play, right?
Yeah.
I think that should be their Nutcracker, not Buried Child, but doing a Carol Pearsall play that was previously produced at Firehouse, because you'll never run out of great titles to pick, for
Absolutely.
starters. Two,
Yeah.
anyone who saw the play would have seen it 20, 30 years ago whenever
Right.
it was originally produced at Firehouse, so they either won't remember seeing it or they'll be excited to see how
Yeah.
it looks in 2024,
I think that would be so
2025.
cool, and especially if you do. I mean, let's say you brought back Eurydice or something, one of my
Yeah.
favorite plays to do ever.
Yep, I remember that.
And you paired it with another one that maybe another resident company came in with that model that they're doing. I don't know. It could be
Yeah.
really interesting.
No, and I think the nomadic approach has borne out for a lot of companies. Yes, and I feel like it's doing very well with it. Fifth Wall was doing well with it when before Carol's passing, and
Yeah, but they're at
they're
Theatre
still
Lab.
around. Yeah, they're still around.
they're
Oh, is that
opening.
where they're doing their show,
Yeah.
Theatre Lab? So yeah, I mean, there's definitely still that option, but as you said, like space, not only is it the space that you're performing in, but it's the space to store all the props. It's the space it's all of the technical work that goes into a play. So going back to Cadence, what is the future hold?
That's a great question.
What do you optimistically hope the future holds?
We want our own space. You know, a space that we love working. Most of our educational programs are at RPAA.
Right.
And the summer musical works great at Gottwald. It's 180 seats. You know, we usually have big casts, so families want to come, and we sell those shows out for the last 2 years. And not light shows. I mean, Heather's the musical, Carrie the musical, and this year's Pippin. So I just
Not a light
just
show in
got
sight.
the callbacks. Yeah, so we're still true to mission. We're not doing frothy things that don't have relevance in the world still. So ideally, we would have our own space where we could hold classes and we could do smaller shows, which those intimate, I think Cadence is so unique because we have such a specific approach to the craft. I mean, you've been in plays. It really relies on the actor
And musicals.
and the designer and musicals.
I was in
right?
Violet.
That's right. You were fabulous in Violet. But it's not a director going, go here, move here, say it this way. That not that everybody does that at all, but I think it's the onness is really on the artist, and that's why I love working there, and that's what I try to impart to my students. Is say, I'm not going to tell you the class last night. Well, should I stand up here? And I was like, well, I don't know. Do you want to stand up here? I'm not going to tell you what to do. You know? So I said, I want you all to leave this class being thinking artists, thinking actors, not puppets. Speaking of Sesame Street. We were doing that earlier. So yeah, the idea would be to not have to worry about being nomadic. But if we have to be nomadic for a while, then we will. I mean, I feel like some people in this community are just opening their doors and opening their hearts and sharing space. And I love that. I love that idea.
What does your dream future space look like? Is it like a new, your own building or a shared thing, or
like a warehouse, flexible space,
right?
You know, maybe with a little restaurant downstairs. I mean, that's like my
ideally,
dream, right?
Yeah.
A little
Now we're getting
brewery,
into it.
a little wine, a little enoteca. No, but
that
a
definitely
space
has
where
Laine
we
written
could
all over
have.
it.
Yeah, I know, right? That would be ideal.
Yeah.
It's like a warehouse, flexible space that could be intimate, could be a little bit larger for a musical.
You know what the key would be?
What's that?
Parking.
I know.
Gotta have parking.
Parking.
And for theater, you gotta have a lot of it.
Yeah, I know. It's tough.
Yeah, that's the toughest part.
It's tough.
That's what I've always thought about. That's why I always thought there should be a theater in Short
And it has to be
Pump.
in city of Richmond.
No, I think the next one, I think needs to be not in the city.
Okay.
I think it needs to be in a county.
Okay, well, great. I'm moving to the county.
Because parking.
And you're in the county.
Yeah.
Okay, great.
Because parking. I mean, that's literally the reason. Because there are a lot of people who, one, won't go downtown. My parents would not go downtown. I mean, still won't really. Like, they'll come see if I'm in a show, Virginia Up, as long as there's parking. Or wherever.
Right.
But there are people who also may live in the county and may be willing to come downtown. But if it's raining, if it's during rush hour, it's so easy to talk yourself out of things, especially with Netflix on the TV or whatever.
Oh, yeah.
That having to go downtown and figure out parking, even if you love downtown, it can be a real deterrent for people.
Well, and it gets expensive.
Don't
Really
even start with
expensive.
that. Yeah. We're not doing politics on this podcast.
Oh, that's right. Sorry.
Don't get me started on the Richmond parking. Oh, man. Allison and I both lived downtown prior to this house, and in 3 years, my parking options went from these streets to these couple streets to only over there is where you can park, and it's 4 blocks away from my apartment. So it was just like, well, I even if I don't buy a house, I can't live here anymore.
Right. Yeah. Well, we're trying to sell our house, 3517 East Clay. It's a great house.
Gonna get all sorts
But
of
some
stalkers
people have said there's no parking, and I'm like, oh, we've never had an issue on our block parking. It's a dead end cul-de-sac. Like, we've never had an issue.
Yeah.
And as far as living downtown, we have a ton of parking.
Yeah.
You know, not like your situation.
Oh yeah, no. Comparatively, Churchill is parking dream.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's fine.
I'm sure what they're thinking is, I want my own driveway, which I gotta admit is frickin' nice. But Churchill is really the only city neighborhood where like parking is never really an issue. I mean, maybe if you're trying to go to a restaurant that's on Broad Street in Churchill, you might have to drive around the block.
Yeah, but even the
times.
Side streets.
Yeah, exactly.
You can find it.
Yeah.
Yeah. But yeah, I'm excited to have a driveway in the next place.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It is
and a
nice.
garage.
Yeah.
It's like, what? And storage?
Yeah, exactly.
What? It's crazy.
It is nice. Well, yeah, you keep that in mind as Cadence is thinking about space.
Yes.
You're free, because I'm not going to do it. Take my idea and make sure that it is a place that has lots of parking.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
Because I think I really do think that a theater would do well out in the Short Pump area. I mean, theater ain't cheap to attend.
No.
And so it kind of makes sense to put it in a part of town where there's people who are doing well for themselves for the most part. Yeah, I mean, the economics of theater, like, you're behind the scenes on that. You're, like you said, you're writing grants and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Talk to me big picture about the business of theater and, like, how do you...
I mean, there have been so many articles and so many theaters have folded. I mean, really national treasure theaters that have been around forever.
Yes.
It's hard to produce. And I think if you don't have the educational component, you're not going to make it.
So true.
So true. So there's that. And if that means that you have to produce less in order to stay afloat, then you produce less. Or create other programming that can be done remotely, like the Pipeline New Works Festival, or things like that features Richmond writers, but also artists out in New York and things like that. So I think we got to move with the times, to keep it alive. But there's really nothing like live theater.
Yeah.
And sitting in a room with people.
Can I pose I don't know if it's controversial, but just a hot take, if you will. Post-COVID, the other live performance industries have, most of them have come back in full force.
Yes.
Stand-up comedy, professional sports,
Concerts.
World Wrestling Entertainment.
Oh, really? I didn't know that.
Oh, huge.
Okay.
Huge. The Rock just came on as like the president or something like that, a major investor.
And the symphony and the ballets are doing fine too.
Are they?
Yeah.
So what is it about theater, man?
It might be the streaming. It might be that that there's so much content out there for storytelling that's so much cheaper.
And there's a heavy restrictions on streaming the theater plays. Nathaniel and I had that same conversation.
Yeah.
I think that is a huge barrier.
I think so too. Yeah. And I mean, I watched a lot of streaming plays.
Sure. Well, everyone back then, there was a relaxation on the rules, I feel like, at that time. Yeah. But I don't know who's to blame. I don't know if it's the playwrights themselves or if it's the publishing houses, whoever it is that sort of has these blackouts or whatever on being able to just put a camera up and say, here's a cheaper ticket or whatever. Because you got to figure it's not the same people who are going to go put their butts in the seats. And if it is, they're going to do both.
Right. But if you think about Broadway's still going strong.
Are they don't stream. But Broadway's a different beast because now more than ever, it relies on already established industry
and that's
talent.
why Broadway in Richmond gets so many more audiences than any of the resident companies. And I mean, and I'm thrilled for them.
And it's
their titles.
It's also
that people
name
know.
recognition.
Absolutely.
And Brendan and I had this whole conversation.
They will
today.
come down, even though the parking around Altria is not great.
Not great.
People will come from the counties. Some of us participated in a poll. It was last year or the year before, and how many of that audience base had gone to local theater companies. And it wasn't a huge percentage.
I was getting ready to say.
And a lot of people didn't even take the poll.
Yeah.
So how do we get those audiences? But again, is it parking?
I think
is it name recognition?
At least the Altria does have a parking deck.
They do.
And I think name recognition is, it's not even a question. Name recognition is a huge part of it. Just look at, for example, the theater in town that at one point did the most name recognizable shows, Virginia Rep, and look at the shows that they did that did not have name recognition and just look at the ticket sales. It's not even close.
Nope.
Mary freaking Poppins, which is an amazing movie, cute show, but not a great show, sold out like every performance.
Did it?
Yes.
I'm not surprised.
No.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying that Virginia Rep or whoever should do Mary Poppins every year, but I do posit that you should have a Mary Poppins type show every year.
Yeah.
And I think that they try their best without, and most theater companies probably do, without repeating, just doing the same thing over and over again. But it's like, I think that there's something to, if you lose a patron, like say you do Mary Poppins one year, you get a family to come to the theater that year. And then the next season, you don't have that title in the show. I bet there's a certain number of percentage of audience members that you will lose that will not come back.
I bet there is.
But if you can just hook them once a season.
Yep.
And then eventually, hopefully, their kids are interested or they bring people with them. And that's how you sort of, the web like grows. But it's hard to, and I won't put any names out there of any shows, but it's hard to recommend. Like I recommended to a friend of mine the other day to go see a show. And they looked at it and they're like, I don't think it's for me.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I get it.
Yeah. Yeah.
I didn't necessarily think it was me at first, but I went and I enjoyed it and had a really good time. So that's why I recommended them. But I think that's tough. Like, it's like once you've lost them, you've lost them. Not everyone. Because there's always going to be the diehards, and there's always going to be the people that love it. But
well, and let's talk about that. People who are dying out.
Yeah.
The big arts supporters who are dying out, and maybe they're the next generation. I mean, we have some amazing people on our board that are passionate about art, and we're so lucky. They're on the younger side. But are those people leaving legacy? Are they, you know what I'm saying? Like, I think the culture has changed in giving, in philanthropy.
Yeah.
I mean, the culture has certainly changed with grants, and what that focus was. I mean, during COVID, it was about survival.
Yeah.
So the educational programs that are so important, as we know, arts educational programs weren't getting the funding because people needed housing and they needed food, and so there's a shift in all of these tides. And I think that is partly what's affecting things. And then there was the article about how Black Lives Matter, a lot of theaters especially, pivoted to tell those stories. But they didn't necessarily communicate that with their audience base. And the audience base went, wait a minute, I don't know about that, or that maybe that makes me feel threatened, or nobody said that we were going on that direction. So maybe they were used to seeing Mary Poppins with a mostly white cast, and now they're seeing something else that they're not as used to. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
I'm totally stealing that from an article I read, I think, in the New York Times.
Well, I think, and we don't want to talk about the politics in particular, but I do think that is another thing that has ultimately hurt the theater, is that it has become more inherently political.
Yes.
And I think, and the reason I got into theater was not because I'm inherently a political person. I literally said this once to a friend of mine, and I was like a little bit tipsy at the time, and I couldn't believe that it came out of my mouth. But I was like, I think I just love to entertain. And like, I think that's true. Like, I genuinely like to make audiences laugh. I like to make them feel things by singing. And, certainly like the golden era of Broadway, like back in the day, like it was just all about sort of the feel good.
Yeah.
And I do think that there is something that has been lost a little bit about that, Stupid Mary Poppins keeps coming up, but it's just a show that makes you feel good.
Yeah.
Even if it wasn't a title that everyone recognized, it's a show that makes you feel good.
Right.
I think there's something to that.
There is.
And I think there's a place for both to exist.
I think so too. Yeah. And I think there are a few plays, and I'm saying more plays than musicals, but there are plays and musicals that have the relevance and entertain.
Right.
And those are the kinds of stories that I'm attracted to. Yeah. Make you think, but you're not being hit over the head.
Yeah.
With the political agenda.
Yeah.
So, and that's hard.
Yeah.
That's a hard play to write, or a hard musical to write.
Well, and I mean, my 2 cents is, why not have a slot, or like designate that you're going to have one slot that is blatantly political, one slot that is in the middle on politics, one slot that is strictly feel good, and then one slot that is maybe like everyone knows this title.
Yeah.
And like, Jack White famously said in a documentary on the White Stripes, like he likes to put himself in boxes, because once you have put yourself in the box, your objective is to work your way out of the box.
Oh.
And so there's like, people think of like, oh, don't put me in a box. But no, boxes are actually really great, because boundaries, structure, organization. And I would be, I think, more interested. I would be more likely to pull in friends and family and be like, come see this thing with me, if there was, I think, a broader variety of offerings. I think I'll give a shout out to Richmond Shakespeare. I feel like they've had really smart programming recently.
Oh, yeah. Little Chekhov.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And now
Then the new
now
Born with
Sondheim,
Teeth. Now
and-
Sondheim.
and I
It's
think-
really smart.
I think that they're kind of following that a little bit.
Yep. Super smart.
And I hope, and I think it was really smart to rebrand to Richmond Shakespeare. I think that they'll see lots of positive benefits from at least if they continue down the path that they're going on.
Yeah.
You brought up something earlier, and we're coming up towards the end of our time. You said
Time
you
flies
left.
when you're having fun.
It does. I know. I can't believe it. You mentioned you left AEA.
Oh, yeah.
Can
Is
you
this
talk-
political? Can we talk about it?
I don't know. I don't know why you left.
Okay. Well, so I was doing that play, Native Gardens, and it was outside. So it wasn't even in a theater. And it was a very limited run. I think it was like 6 performances or something. And so I said, could I take a break from the union to do this? Because it's the theater company that I work for as well. And they wouldn't give me any wiggle room on that. So having been a dues-paying member for 18 years.
It's a lot of money over 18
That's
years.
a lot of money. I was not happy.
Yeah.
But that wasn't the only reason. I could have just frozen it. But they said, you can't do the show. Even if I froze my membership, I would get in trouble. And I can't get the theater company in trouble, right? And I'm not going to lie. And I just, I want to be fair to all the actors that the union does help. But the other thing that made me upset was that they changed the rules. So it used to be, and it was so hard to get equity because you had to be in an equity show or raise points. So it was a badge. Now you can literally go sing at your grandmother's birthday party and get paid $10 and join equity. So there's no clout to it. Anybody can join the union now. No offense to burlesque dancers. I think burlesque dancing is a different art form than being an actor.
Love it. It's a lot of fun.
Yeah, it's great. I don't think it's the same.
But they're equity now?
They can be.
How?
Because it's professional performing, I guess. So that rubbed me the wrong way because I worked really hard to get my equity card in New York.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then, if again, back to the market in Richmond, I mean, not everybody can afford equity actors.
No.
So does
Very
it really
few
behoove
can.
me to stay in the union?
Oh yeah, if you're
living in Richmond?
If your primary objective is to actually act and get to do the thing and not necessarily to be professional, then being an equity member really is a hindrance.
It is.
I was briefly equity. I joined through SAG, which I don't even know if you're allowed to do anymore.
I don't know.
But basically, if you were a member of SAG for a certain amount of time, you could just buy into it.
I remember, yeah.
And I got 2 equity contracts out of it, which was really incredible. But then I moved to Norfolk, and there was only one theater in town that hired equity actors. And at that time, they literally almost never hired locals. They pretty much hired everyone out of New York. They have since changed that, and I think they've seen great benefits from that.
Oh, good.
But there was a bunch of community theaters in Norfolk, and they were doing a production of Urinetown, and I really wanted to do it. And I wrote a letter to the president of Equity or whatever, and he had a very different response, and it was clearly a different president. I mean, this was 15 years ago or something like that. But he actually wrote me a handwritten letter back.
Really?
And was like, I wasn't asking for like a freeze. I was basically just saying that I'm leaving the Actors Equity because my life has started taking a shift. And he wrote a letter back and was like very grateful that I like actually took the time to do it and didn't just scab or whatever.
Oh, good.
Yeah, and I
that's
really
nice.
remember that very vividly.
It's all about the personal touch.
Yeah.
Yep. Wow, that's cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I was sad about it, but
It opens you up.
yeah.
And you're not doing it for the money.
I don't do projects for the money.
Yeah.
I mean, I like money.
Money's great.
Money's great, but I don't do artistic projects for the money.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
That is the big lesson I have learned since the COVID times. Is like that can't be what you're doing it for.
It has to be for me, it's either the story is so compelling or the message is so compelling. And that's usually the first thing. Or it's a director or a group of actors that I want to work with. or, oh, this playwright just really has something to say. Yeah, I've never really, I don't think ever done things for the money. And that was the thing about, you know, when I was younger and thinking, okay, do I really want to do my eyebrows and do the whole film and TV? Because that's the business, right? Or would I rather be in a community and build a community? And that's what I organically chose. Yeah. Even though that community shifted from New York to Italy to Idaho to back to Virginia, that's more important to me than the fame of it.
Yeah.
And always has been.
Well, fame and money are two different things.
They are.
Unfortunately, I think they do kind of come hand in hand in that art industry.
They do. That's that 1%.
Yeah.
Or whatever percent it is.
Though not as much in the theater world, but certainly in the film world. It's like inextricable. Is that the right word? I'm not sure. But I was always interested in, and hence the podcast, I was always almost more interested in the business of the art, because maybe it's because like is it left brain or right brain, but I'm much more like math oriented.
Yeah.
And I think of things like an equation. And so it was always, I wasn't, obviously if you're working in the theater, you're not doing it for the money. That's just,
no,
you're setting yourself for the ultimate failure.
Yes.
But I was always very willing to I would negotiate my contracts.
You've always been really good about that.
And I one of the purposes of this podcast is to help artists understand their worth.
Oh, yeah.
And I always had a grasp on that, even when I was not a good artist, if you consider me one now. But like even when I was bad at it, like I was always thinking about that. And it was literally like I negotiated my first real non-equity contract right before the COVID times, where I was like going to get paid weekly as an actor, and it was like very close to the equity minimums.
Yeah.
And then that all went away. But I think that specifically for theater, and like this podcast is not explicitly about theater. I'm going to be talking to a lot of other different types of artists. But I have a true passion for helping the theater in whatever way become like the performance art form that drives audiences to it.
Gosh.
I don't know that it's possible.
I love that this is your aspiration.
But I really that's kind of what I'm always like drilling down to, I think, when I'm having these conversations. It's like, how do we bring it back? And not only how do we bring it back, how do we make it better?
Right. Well, and I think that immersive experience, the experience, right? The play that I just saw you at, which we won't name, was very immersive and used a lot of technology. And I think that's what we need to do. We need to change with the times and make it an experience. Yeah. And that experience is also nice if you get a glass of wine or a beer or even a little soft drink. You know, that really helps. And if parking is not too hard. Yes.
Yeah. It's easier when you have a smaller theater. Like the parking situation becomes less of a problem. Yeah. But any theater that is downtown has a parking problem. It's the nature of it.
We have callbacks coming up next Sunday, and GalaxyCon is in town. And I'm like, sorry, y'all. I mean, I think I'm going to take an Uber to be there. Because I remember last year, I didn't know it was GalaxyCon. At least this year, I was like, when is Galaxy? No!
And it's at RPAA, the callbacks? Oh, boy.
Yeah.
That's right in the thick of it.
So I was like, all right, well, give yourself plenty of parking time. Or get a ride or, Yeah.
So what, aside from parking, what are the other things that we can do to rejuvenate this art form that we both love so much?
I think we need a personal approach. I do. I think we need to, it's like writing the handwritten note. I feel like theater has to be a handwritten note to every single audience member. You know, something that brings them in, that's not just, here's the show,
Right.
blah, blah, blah. You know, here's the experience.
Yeah.
What did you glean from this? I don't know.
Yeah.
Something different. Like maybe True West wanting to see both of those wonderful actors.
Yeah.
So you come back twice
Yeah.
to see a different play. I don't know. I don't know if it'll work.
Yeah.
But something that gives the audience almost a buy-in. You know?
When you were talking about making it more of an experience, immersive, my mind went to, as soon as you walk into the building, you're somehow in the world of the play, versus the lobby always being the exact same for every play.
Wouldn't that be cool?
I think there's something to that.
Yeah.
What would that look like? I don't know True West. What would it look like for True West?
Oh, I don't know. I don't know, but I know that at least when you walked into the theater in Small Mouth Sounds, you felt like you were in the yurt.
Yeah.
You know?
At the very least, that should be happening the moment you sit down in your seats.
Yeah. I remember one of my favorite theater companies ever is Théâtre de Complicité, and I saw a play called Mnemonic in New York years ago, and you had a leaf. Everybody had a leaf on their seat in like a little plastic bag. And the play starts with a voiceover. It's Simon McBurney telling you to look at the leaf and think about your own line, a family line, with the leaf.
Yep.
And that's how the play started. So immediately, as an audience member, you have this huge personalization of memories that you have brought in with just things like that that make it so personal.
Yeah.
And then the play itself was amazing.
Yeah.
But you were already in it.
I love that. I think that's really important. We did something similar for Urinetown at the basement. We did something similar with, I can never remember the name. What was the children's show at Virginia Rep with Lucy Caudill that I directed?
Oh, Tuck Everlasting.
Tuck Everlasting. I can never remember the name of it. Yeah, I mean, just simple things is like having like a tree in the lobby and like just like whatever. And music, the sounds of nature or whatever. For Urinetown, it was like we had recorded some pre-recorded like prison, announcements.
We did that for Carrie. For Carrie last year at the Gottwald, we had announcements going on.
Yes.
All throughout.
Yep.
So you'd hear the bell ring and then you'd hear, please report to the office, the character names and things like that.
Yeah. What about in terms of the marketing? You know, I'm in marketing. We're both in marketing to a certain degree. What's the approach there? Any ideas? I think, not to toot my own horn, but I think video is very important.
Video's huge.
Yeah.
And small video.
Yeah.
Short video.
Yes.
Attention span. Absolutely. Video. I don't know that mailings work anymore. You know? It's social media, it's influencers. That's what, at least people that, I'm not a marketing guru, but we have some on our board, and they're like, influencers. Get the word out there on social media. So invite your influencers for free, give them free tickets. And we've done a little bit of this, but then there's a whole tracking thing. Like, you can just go down the rabbit hole.
Yeah.
And I think maybe we need to, again, to get the people from the counties.
Yeah.
Whether it's downtown or in Short.
What percentage of it was it at the Altria Theater that had gone to see a local play? Do you remember?
I don't remember, but there's a study. We can ask Phil Crosby
was it like
for it.
20?
No.
Less?
Yeah.
Wow. So let's just say it's 10.
Yeah.
So that means, and I think there's like, how many seats are there? Like 3,000, something like that. And let's say that for To Kill a Mockingbird, let's say that they sell out, or let's say they sell 90% capacity, 3,000 people. I mean, that's 2,500, 2,600, 2,700 people. So there's literally thousands of people who have been proven to be fans of the art form. And what can you do to bring them in? And
we've tried ads
in those playbills.
Yeah. I know that some theater companies are doing that. Again, our next play isn't for a while, but I can't remember if we did an ad in there. But do people even look at those?
Yeah.
Have they even heard of some of these smaller companies? With the local talent that we have.
Yeah.
You know? I mean, we have so many amazing actors and singers.
Have you ever tried
town.
busking with like songs from the musical of your next show outside after an Altria show?
No, would they let us do that even?
I think all you need is like a permit or something.
Oh, really?
I'm pretty sure you can just get like a permit to busk.
That's interesting.
Yeah. It's legal. Busking is legal, but I do think you have to be permit. I don't know if it is legal in Richmond.
That is a really great idea.
I know that it is in Norfolk, but yeah, like plan them before and after the show. Have a little amp or a little acoustic guitar.
We gotta look into that.
Yeah,
the legality of that.
Yeah, the legality. Definitely look into that first.
Definitely.
Do that part first.
Yeah, because I don't know if it's even, would they allow you to even pass out flyers?
Yeah, it's a good question.
I don't know.
It's a good
I
question.
can ask. I'll ask.
So we're coming up to the close of our time today.
Well, this was fun, Matt.
And you already talked about the hoedown.
Yeah.
What else do you want to pitch about what's coming up, either for you or Cadence or both?
Oh, yeah. We've got a ton of summer camps.
Yeah.
Which are filling up very quickly.
I was getting ready to say. It might
so
be
go to
full
cadencetheatre.org.
Yeah.
We've got Pippin callbacks, so that'll be fun. We've got a cabaret that we've been doing for a few years now that's going around to different retirement homes.
Love it.
That's super fun.
Yeah.
Let's see. We've got True West. We've got Pipeline that just finished. We've got Bloodlines, which is finishing filming this summer, and then that'll be released.
Are you going to do a fresh new Pipeline after? Because I know this one's sort of coming to a close.
I'm not sure. They're doing a postmortem Thursday.
Okay.
So we'll see. We had a bunch of playwrights this year and screenwriters. We opened it up to screenwriting.
Okay.
Because, So, yeah, lots of things coming down the pipe.
And what about Train?
Train's happening.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then we'll have auditions for Train.
Yeah. When will those
in
be?
June.
Okay.
Yep.
Nice.
So just keep checking back.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
And True West is as far as you've plotted out for in terms of like the actual produced shows?
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah. And that'll actually, so. But it's coming.
That's exciting.
We're looking,
and that's
we're
at the
reading.
Firehouse.
Yeah.
Okay. I didn't realize that. That's exciting. Yeah.
It's very exciting.
Yeah.
Yeah. I love that model.
Yeah. I've read it once and it was like, holy crap, this is a lot.
Yeah, it's crazy. But I'm excited about the cast and that they finally get to do it.
Yeah, because you worry about, I know that like in that show, one of the brothers is a little bit more like, has it a little bit more together, is maybe a little bit more straight, and then one of them's a little bit more like
loose
wild.
cannon.
Both of those actors could definitely do the loose cannon thing. So it'll be fun to see them doing the more subtle side too. Yeah. Because as soon as you said both those actors, like, wow.
I know.
They're both wild on stage.
Yeah.
So that is exciting.
Yeah,
it's definitely
very
a
exciting.
great choice.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's only like 5 years in the making.
Yeah. Better be good.
That's right.
You better know all
well, they
your
haven't been
lines.
rehearsing for 5 years. But
honestly, what a treat, though. You got to do both parts, and you've had all this time to learn your lines. I just hope they've taken advantage.
I know, right? Well, it kept getting postponed and postponed and postponed.
Yeah.
Because variants.
All right. Anything else?
No, this was fun.
All right. Thank you so much,
Thank you
Laine.
for having me.
Appreciate you.
Appreciate you.